Today we're at the Lee County Historical Museum out in Lochapoka, Alabama, and we're going to be talking about some of the native animals to Alabama, mainly mammals that the early Native Americans and our pioneer ancestors used and that we still use today. First, I'm going to tell you what a mammal is. A mammal is an animal that has hair or fur, which is what we are. If you look at our arms, our heads, we have hair. Some animals have much thicker, so we're going to refer to it as fur. They also are warm-blooded, which means they are endothermic, meaning their body creates heat from within. If they're ectothermic, that would mean they're getting heat from outside. That would be like lizards, reptiles, snakes, things like that. Another one is that the female gives birth to live young. They do not lay eggs. And another one is the female provides milk through special glands that the young feed on, and that provides them with their nourishment until they get old enough to handle solid food. This first animal I'm going to show you is the red fox. And this animal has a very thick fur. You can tell that it's got a very thick layer of bushy tail. This is an omnivore. That means it eats plants and animal material. It eats rodents, rabbits, birds, snakes, lizards, but it also will eat nuts, fruit, some grasses, roots. So it has a very wide variety of things it will eat, which makes it more easier to survive because it has such a wide diet. This is another fox species, and here's one that beside me that is a mounted one. This is the gray fox, and you can tell that there's a little difference between the two in color and size. The red fox likes more open areas, grassy lands, brushy areas for its environment. The gray fox is more attracted to have thicker woods, swampy areas. But the neat thing about the gray fox is that it has the ability to climb trees. Its claws are a little more adapted for hooking into tree bark and allowing it to climb. But both of these are considered omnivores because, as we said before, they have a very wide range of a diet that includes animals and plant material. The third canine that we have in Alabama is the coyote. A lot of people think, oh, we're talking about a wolf, but we no longer have wolves in Alabama. We did have red wolves here, but as the Europeans arrived, the settlers, they were seen as a competition for our livestock as a predator, so they were eradicated, which basically means they were killed. The word we use now is extirpated. That means there are still some left in the wild, but there are none in Alabama. So extirpated means they're absent from this area. The coyote was not a predator that was here early on, but it arrived after the red wolf was exterminated, and that's because this is what's called an apex predator. It means it's at the top of the food chain. And the red wolf would have been an apex predator, and they would have used the same ecosystems and fit in. So they would have been in direct conflict with one another. So the red wolf pretty much kept the coyote out. As the red wolf was eliminated, the coyote moved from the west to the east, and now you find these all across the United States. This is also an omnivore, and the reason it's been able to spread is it's very adaptable, meaning it can live in a lot of different ecosystems. Coyotes live in cities, such as Montgomery, Auburn. They also live out in the woods, so they can live in a lot of different places. This one is the white-tailed deer. Now, this one played a really important role as a meat source and as a clothing source. This is the hide or skin of one. As you can see on the outside, it's got all these long hairs. The inside is the skin, which is when it's tanned, this is what we call leather. And this would have been used for making their clothing, their leggings, all types of things, moccasins, because it's a sturdier, thicker leather. But there would have been a lot of meat on a deer. As we said, the deer were very important to populations in our area. Even today, we still continue to hunt deer for their meat. But with hunting taking place in the 1930s, we were down to probably just a few hundred in Alabama before they went back into restocking and protecting them. And today we have over 1 million deer roaming Alabama. And this would have been a herbivore. That means this animal only eats plant material, does not eat meat. So this would have been one of our largest herbivores. Another animal that we would have had here would have been this one, which a lot of people can identify quickly because of the mask on its face, which is the raccoon, and the ringed tail. The raccoon is another omnivore. The mistake a lot of people make is not keeping their garbage cans covered and locked down, because raccoons are opportunistic, meaning that if you have a garbage can with some food in it, they're going to get into it. And the problem is, human food is not good for wildlife. We shouldn't be feeding leftovers to raccoons or possums because it's not good for them. And it also helps to spread disease because they will come in numbers that are not natural. Now, the raccoon is the one that comes up quite often in stories, about being careful around wildlife. Raccoons have been known to be a carrier or a host for rabies. That does not mean all raccoons carry rabies. It just means that it's considered a vector animal or one that rabies does show up in. So we need to be careful that we that we enjoy watching wildlife, but we don't try to touch it when it's in the wild, because you could be bitten or scratched, and then you'll need to go to the doctor because you don't know if that animal was infected with a disease. So you need to be careful, but this is another animal you'll find roaming around our areas. The next animal we're going to talk about is the beaver. Now this is a small one. Beavers can get to be 40, 50 pounds, so they can be very large, but this one was very popular. In fact, when the early Spaniards and people from Portugal and other countries came here from Europe, they were looking for gold and silver. They did not find it in North America. But they did notice that we had a large wildlife population, and a lot of these animals provided a valuable product called fur, which was harvested and then sent back to Europe and made people wealthy, because these furs could be sold for gold and silver. But the beaver is an herbivore also. It is a plant eater. Now, it's an aquatic plant eater, meaning that it lives in the water. It has very strong incisor front teeth that it uses to cut through trees. But the beaver does not actually eat the wood, even though they cut trees down. What they do is they scrape the bark off, and under the bark there's a very thin layer called the cambium. That is the part they're after, along with eating the leaves and the buds and the ends of the twigs that exist. The next animal we have is the striped skunk. We have different types of skunks in Alabama. This one is considered the striped skunk. There's also other types of skunks, spotted skunk. But the thing that all these skunks have in common is they have glands that emit a very foul-smelling liquid that is used as a defensive spray. And if a skunk feels threatened by a predator, they will spray them, and that will drive them off. This is considered an omnivore also because it eats a large variety of things. It was sometimes referred to in the insectivore group because it eats a lot of insects, but it will also visit carrion, which means another animal has died, such as a deer, and it will come and visit a dead animal to get food. So it's an opportunist to because it's not a very fast animal, but you'll find skunks in Alabama. Another mammal that we have in Alabama is the mink. The mink is a member of the weasel family, which includes the river otter as the largest member, and then there's some other smaller weasels that fall into this group. But this is a mink, and this is considered a carnivore. It does not eat plant material, so it's only going to hunt other animals, fish, crayfish, birds, things like that. So it's a true predator in that it only eats meat, and that would be the same with the river otter and all of its family. The last one that we're going to talk about is the possum. And what's really kind of neat about the possum is it's Alabama and North America's only marsupial. Now the term marsupial means that the female has a pouch or pocket on its belly in which it raises its young. When the babies are born, they're not much bigger than a small bean. And the babies will climb up, no hair, their eyes are still sealed shut. They'll climb up the belly of the opossum, the female, and get to her pouch, and they'll go inside. Inside the pouch, there are teats, which is a female mammal gland for providing milk. The babies will latch onto it, and if they get a hold of one, then that means that they're going to have a milk supply on which to eat and live and grow. But those babies that make it inside will grow and stay in there for a couple months until they get large enough to come out. Any that did not make it to that pouch will perish, but that's why she may give birth to like 24 babies, only with the idea that probably 8 of them will survive at the most. So we've talked about several mammals. There's other mammals and many other animals that we have in Alabama, but we just wanted to talk to you briefly about some of those that are found here and the importance role that they played in the Native Americans' lives, in the early European settlers that came here, and even today. So look around your yard, take a look as you drive around with your parents and see if you don't see some of Alabama's wildlife.